Welcome to the weekend with watches. I'm your host, tmosso. I'm wearing my favorite color, and everything you see here is for sale. All prices, names, and references in the description. Remember, guys, there is a direct line, tmosso at thewatchbox.com, where you can inquire to me and that's my Instagram, where you can inquire to me and my team regarding anything you see here. It is the new streamlined direct service line from you to me and my crew. tmosso at thewatchbox.com, and make one of these yours. Let's get straight to it. First thing I want to show you is a Breguet 7047, a watch launched back in 2007, taking the Tradition model line. Technically, it is the Breguet Tradition 7047. 41 millimeters in platinum. It took the Tradition line where it had never been before. The newly born Tradition line, designed to evoke Abraham Louis Breguet pocket watches in a wristwatch format, soared to new heights with the addition of this Tourbillon Power Reserve Fusee, a timepiece that simply exhausts superlatives. Now you could see right here, as I wind the watch, the chain that operates the Fusee, which works exactly like the gears on a bicycle, creating more mechanical advantage as the mainspring barrel loses its torque. A constant force device born of the late Renaissance era for pocket watches, here providing constant force to an 18,000 vibration per hour tourbillon carriage entirely crafted of titanium. Now, what you might note is that there is a silicon hairspring here, but it is a Breguet overcoil, a two-part construction debuted by Breguet back in 2006, an overcoil hairspring out of silicon, creating the best of past and future in the present. The dial, solid gold, cut on a rose lathe and then silvered for effect with fire-blued hands. You could see the exceptional depth of this movement as viewed from any angle, and there's a little hidden power reserve indicator right up at the top, as you can see, operating on top of the Fusee and indicating the remaining power reserve. Turn the watch over, you can see this caliber 581 is gorgeous. Handsome, with individual bridges for the wheels of the drivetrain. You'll appreciate that the wheels are cut in the form of vintage clock and pocket watch wheels. You have the day of the tourbillon there, which turned out to be June 26th of 1801, the day the patent was originally filed by Abraham Louis Breguet, and then freehand engraving of the name in the movement. And as you can see, it is a frosted finish in black PVD, evoking vintage timepieces, but very modern in its architecture. In platinum, the watch wears easily on the wrist, as it's one of the few Breguet Tradition watches with a full deployant clasp rather than a pin buckle. Less than 51 millimeters lug-to-lug means this is a wrist-friendly watch in spite of that dramatically domed bubble-like sapphire. Flip it over real quick, you can see the Breguet deployant clasp, twin trigger release, as you can see, and a double folder, so it's friendly to small wrists, with a lovely filigree-style Breguet logo. Wire style, that's what filigree means in this case. And as you can see, the timepiece absolutely show-stopping in every regard. And yet, it is not the end, but the beginning of our show. Let's jump to a Grande Seiko that I know you're going to love, also in platinum, and not one, but two platinums. This is the 2018 SBGA 385 44GS case Kira-Zuri spring drive. So the SBGA 385, one of the USA edition watches, featuring the Kira-Zuri dial here in lovely shimmering silver. Kira-Zuri, derived from Japanese for effectively shiny painting. This watch is that. As you can see, the hands, let me clean off my fingerprints here, but the hands on the center of the dial, immaculately black polished by manual means. You could see the same treatment lavished upon the indices, with a fired blue steel hand for the seconds, the smooth sweep of spring drive, 3-day power reserve, the 44GS case, as you could see, faceted and angular with all black polished facets, executed by Grande Seiko's Zaratsu tin plate polishing system to create that mirrored surface, not on a screw or a regulator as you'll find in Swiss watches, but on a component the size of a case. Again, I'm sorry about my fingerprints. This one is immaculate in person, but you could see the complexity, the shape, and the quality of the finishing. That's before we even get to the hand-executed dial. On the case back, caliber 9R15, not spring drive, hot-rodded spring drive. This limited edition of 20 pieces features a spring drive movement that is accurate to within plus or minus 10 seconds per month. Standard spring drive that is driven by the spring, no batteries, no capacitors, no motors. Standard spring drive is plus or minus 15 seconds a month. This one right here is plus or minus 10 seconds per month, and though it is very much a dress watch in its style and sensibility, nevertheless it is 100 meters water resistant Grande Seiko, not shorting you any features. A full deployant clasp, and an unusual one, as you'll often find on platinum watches, white gold is used for swing arm components that are thin, spindly, and delicate. Well, rather than using white gold, which would be déclasse on a platinum watch, Grande Seiko has used the harder PT900 in conjunction with PT950 to create the clasp mechanism, so the clasp is all platinum, using the rarely seen and much harder PT900 grade to preserve its structural integrity. Now let's talk a little bit about a watch that's a bit more accessible and yet lets you delve into vintage Rolex without any financial or aesthetic regrets. A watch that always looks good outside the realm of the sports watches. You must consider Rolex's historic vignette dials to be among the most charismatic offerings of the past. This is a Rolex Oyster Perpetual date. This timepiece is a 1978 serial number 6694 reference. Plexiglass crystal, as you can see, with a remarkably straight and shapely full-figured case with all of its original metal, symmetry, and crispness of line. You can see the break between satin on the lug hoods and the polish of the case flank. You can see the condition of the plexiglass crystal and the elegance of the case. But it's that blue gradient fade, that lacquer application, that really set the standard for gradient dials for decades to come. The Rolex vignette dials are rare and prized. Though this is a 34mm stainless steel watch, it has outsized personality, and as you can see, the timepiece featuring a lovely original tritium dial with original tritium. It is both a gradient fade vignette dial and tritium. Throw it on the wrist, and it has a handsome vintage stance. Not too big, not too small. This is a timepiece that represents a more discreet, conventional vintage size. A watch that wears well on any wrist. It can be an awesome entry into vintage Rolex, vintage watch collecting in general, or if you are a woman seeking to collect men's watches that fit, this would be one way to get in with something absolutely singular that you're almost guaranteed to never see on the wrist, even of other vintage Rolex collectors. That is a very special watch. Now, if you want a super-duper dial in a more modern timepiece with perhaps more modern water resistance and durability, consider the 2019 Oris Big Crown Bronze Pointer date. Now, this is from the Big Crown family, 40mm in bronze. You can see a combination of lush satin finish with polished gold-like bronze accenting. It looks like rose gold in person, and you can see that vintage-inspired 1930s derived aviation coined bezel. You can also see the Big Crown, the titular Big Crown. It is a screw down, 50 meters water resistant with a screw down crown, is surface swimmable, and you'll note that this one can easily be swapped out to water resistant straps because it features pull tab spring bars. Now you'll note that there's a distressed, minimally tanned, suede calfskin on the top and a conventional calfskin on the bottom. The timepiece featuring a matching bronze pin buckle. They sweat the details, and you can see underneath a bubble-like plexiglass inspired sapphire, a brown dial that is the namesake of this watch. It's the brown bronze, and you can see that Oris using the pointer date with quickset to good effect to create symmetry and balance, as there's no date window or aperture to break the integrity of the dial. You'll also appreciate by night that both the triangular indices and the Arabic numerals are loomed, with the cathedral style hands at the center glowing like a torch. Tons of luminescence here. A very practical modern sports watch inspired by 1930s Oris aviators and the 1938 Oris pointer date, a date complication that remains a signature of the brand's watches. On the wrist, 40mm, just about 49mm lug to lug, and a good solid fit. As you can see, the curvature of the lugs makes this one an even better fit on my 16cm circumference wrist. A lovely all-arounder sports watch for those who don't want to go too aggressive with a rotating bezel. That said, for those who do want to go more aggressive and more distinctive and upscale, but staying within the Oris value equation, a watch for every day, here is the Oris 2019 Pro Pilot X. 44mm in titanium. The watch is remarkably slender for a 44 and only 13mm thick, in spite of Oris's 10-day power reserve, manufacture complicated caliber 115. So this watch coming out this year is very much up to the minute. With a skeletonized dial and skeletonized caliber 115 movement, you have a 10-day power reserve with a power reserve indicator that moves more quickly. You can see it accelerates as it approaches zero, so it's more pronounced, visible, and insistent as your watch runs down. 21.6 beat rate, done all in-house. You can see Oris's distinctive aviation lap belt inspired lift release system for its locking deployant clasps. You can see the watch with an extravagant caseback and an entirely skeletonized caliber 115, 38 joules manual wind with a micrometric regulating system and Edicron. So these can be regulated very, very, very precisely. Beaten away at 21.6, you can see the open mainspring barrel that allows you to glimpse the enormous mainspring that powers this watch. And although it is a pilot-inspired watch, it's a Pro Pilot after all, it's 100 meters water resistant with a screw-down crown. So with long legs, plenty of loom, lightweight on the wrist thanks to the titanium, and 100 meters of water resistance, you can wear this watch at any time, under any circumstances, for any activities. And I should mention, as my hometown New York Yankees just signed Garrett Cole, the Yankees are sponsored by Oris, and Yankees manager Aaron Boone wears this watch personally. That was his choice from among the options they were shown pre-season last year. It's still on his wrist, and yes, there is a factory accessory strap for this watch, which is how he wears his. So if you want the Aaron Boone watch, it's right here. Whether you're a fan of the Yankees from 2003 or modern day, Aaron Boone means good associations. Now, sticking with full bracelet titanium watches, but of a very different sensibility, I want to discuss a limited edition 200-piece Bulgari Octo Finissimo automatic, titanium and media blasted externally to give it a lovely satin finish. You can see that matte finish is matched by the matte finish of the dial, which is also grade 5 media blasted titanium. What sets this one apart is the lush cobalt blue indices, which are lacquered and transferred, and then the hands of the dial, which are metallic in finish, but the same blue. You can see there is a ceramic cabochon outboard of the double-rowed knurled crown to give it an element of scratch resistance. Reportedly, 110 facets to this Octo case. It's a little bit like the Iron Throne. If you actually sat around and counted, you'd probably go mad. I don't know how many swords, I don't know how many facets. All I know is it's a lot. There's a nice juxtaposition between the circular elements, the dial itself, the sub-register, the crystal, as well as the outer bezel, and the angular elements. As you can see, the rest of the case is highly angular, and the inner bezel itself is faceted and geometric. The watch is only 5.1 millimeters thick, and you see 1 out of 200 pieces. This, in my opinion, is the most attractive version other than the Middle East limited series Octo Finissimo automatic with its Eastern Arabic numerals and green lacquered indices and hands. Now, this watch, being 40 millimeters in diameter, 5.1 millimeters thick, needs a remarkable power plant to make it all practical. And inside you have the 2.23 millimeter thick caliber BVL 138, a platinum ceramic bearing rotor, a micro rotor, so you have a big open case back, as thin as a manual with the open vista to view that you'd get with a manual, but with the convenience of an automatic and a power reserve of 50 to 55 hours. Full balance bridge, 21.6 beat rate. You can see this 36 jewel movement is expansive, over 36 millimeters in diameter, properly sized and shaped to fit the case. You'll also appreciate that Bulgari went above and beyond to make this watch thin. As inside the bracelet, you'll note how when buckled down, the clasp actually sits inside a little revetment or recess so that it's effectively flush with the bracelet when buckled shut on your wrist. They really sweated the details here. Fabrizio Buonamassa's masterpiece, and the 2017 GPHG Men's Watch Prize winner right here. A timepiece that still stops traffic. One of the finest you can buy from an up-and-coming brand and a true manufacturer with its own manufacturer building in Le Sentier, Vallée de Joux, a neighbor of Breguet and Audemars Piguet and Jaeger LeCoultre, and truly catching up as a near equal to those August houses. Now let's jump to a more mainstream brand that I know you're going to love because I picked unconventional watches. You saw the vignette dial Rolex Oyster Perpetual date. We'll now take a look at the Rolex 116518. Yellow gold and beastly in its coloration. A two-tone gold and black Cornish Colors Special, or, if you prefer, Pittsburgh Steelers. The black and the gold right here is absolutely jaw-dropping. The contrast is striking in person, and the practicality with a full Oyster Flex strap bracelet. It does have a metal band through its core, so it's a bracelet, not a strap, but it looks incredibly compelling. And at 40 millimeters, anyone can wear this watch. It has the personality of any Hublot Big Bang or King Power, but arguably more integrity about its manufacture, its detailing, its pricing, and its watchmaking. One of the absolute hottest Rolex Daytona models in precious gold of all time. This is a watch that's truly swimmable with 100-meter water resistance, a 3-day automatic winding power reserve, a chronometer certification, and Rolex goes one better, guaranteeing the watch to run no worse than -2 + 2 seconds per day. Full, milled out gold deployant clasp. You can see that the watch has a nice smart closure, double locking with a lift lock system, you have to lift it, and you can see it buckle. That's the lift lock snapping, and then the clamshell. The double closure system, exceptionally tight and secure. Fully loomed, you can see on the dial, the indices themselves have been blackened to match that black lacquer dial base. And then the timepiece, of course, with a ceramic bezel to shake off scuffs, with the numerals, the calibrations, and the letters of the bezel actually consisting of deposited yellow gold to create that contrast. One of the all-time great Daytonas, and one of the rarest, as this is not a common watch in any of its configurations, but generally it's seen with a gold dial rather than a black dial, making this a minority option amongst an already scarce Daytona model and one of the most desirable modern Rolex. Now let's jump 1 degree scarcer to a day-date unlike any you've seen. This is a 36mm Z series, so 2007 Rolex Day-Date in white gold. What sets it apart? Start with the bracelet. It's the Oyster bracelet rather than the conventional Rolex President. It still features the crown clasp though, so this one remains low in profile with the crown clasp delineating the break between the two halves of the bracelet. Rolling over, you can see more differences compared to a standard Day-Date. Instead of the regular white gold fluted crown, here we have a domed profile that gives the watch a little bit of a vintage bubble back aesthetic that I absolutely adore. On the dial, you have Arabic numerals, radially arrayed, military style, all in white gold, high polish, and then you have the metallic blue Rolex wave dial with several different grades, tones, and textures of blue. So while it has a metallic shimmering sheen, each part of this dial reacts differently to light. Of course, it's a double quickset caliber 3155, 48-hour automatic winding power reserve, and 100 meters water resistance. So this is an all-arounder and a remarkably uncommon Day-Date. If you want a Rolex no one else has, I've got some great options on the table today that make the fairly anonymous and ubiquitous brand anything but. So here's the 1-year wonder, a timepiece that is already considered a certifiable collector's grail watch. The 1-year reference 116719. Why is it a 1-year watch? Because in 2018, the Pepsi Jubilee in stainless steel arrived. So Rolex's previous 2014 to 2017 white gold Pepsi was given one major change, the blue lacquer dial, to set it apart more distinctly from the steel Jubilee. Well, this watch, with the reference 116719 and the blue dial, wound up being made for only 1 year before Rolex changed the movement and changed the designation, the reference, to 126719, meaning this already extraordinarily scarce, roughly $40,000 white gold Rolex became a 1-year model. In that year, 2018, everyone wanted the steel Jubilee, and no one was thinking about buying the gold watch. As a result, this wasn't just a 1-year watch, it wasn't even commonly ordered in that 1 year. Throw it on the wrist, you can see it has presence. Any Pepsi bezel GMT is a big deal. Dating back to the original 6542 Pussy Galore, if we can still use that nickname on YouTube, it has always been the core aesthetic of the watch, designed in conjunction with Pan Am to provide pilots with an instantaneous 24-hour reference so they could see global Greenwich Mean Time as well as the local airport or port of entry GMT offset. So originally a dual-time watch, this watch, part of the GMT Master 2 series, with 2 independent time zones, and via the bezel, the ability to view 3 time zones. Fully loomed blue chromalite Rolex lume, and of course 100 meters water resistant. It is a very versatile watch and a very collectible watch. You have that ceramic insert in pastel tones, which Rolex says was to reference that original 6542 and its bakelite bezel. I think that's a little bit of backwards justification. Nevertheless, it is a very distinctive, rich, and lovable timepiece. That's a watch for the purist collector. That's the watch for the guy who wants one to put in the safe for the sake of the future, because that is a watch I would never use as a beater. A daily driver, sure, but treat it well, because that is one of the few surefire future collectibles that will be on the cover of an auction catalog in 60 years. Now let's talk about a watch, 2 watches really, that represent different generations and different value propositions. The Generation 2 Vacheron Overseas and the Generation 3. Now, the Generation 2 came out in 2004, and the Chronograph was the version to have. 42 millimeters in stainless steel, anti-magnetic inner cage, like what you'll find in a Rolex Milgauss, so highly anti-magnetic to 25,000 ampere per meter. It's also 150 meters water resistant, powered by a high horology Frederic Breguet 1185 column wheel vertical clutch automatic adjusted in 5 positions with Vacheron's Grande date or double-digit date complication. Note the lovely herringbone crosshatch of the black galvanized dial. The fact that the case is clearly and handsomely inspired by the 1977 Vacheron 222 sports watch, and the fact that the bracelet, while beautifully hand-finished, is also fully sizable with every individual link on both sides of the bracelet removable and screw-fixed for perfect sizing. I'm going to throw that one on the wrist and then show you the Generation 3 watch and its variant that has no equivalent in the world of Audemars Piguet and Patek. I'm going to wear this one upside down so you can see it right side up, and you can see the Vacheron 49150. That's its reference. Stainless steel, remarkably thin at under 13 millimeters, and easy to wear thanks to the curvature of the lugs. It's also easy to fit thanks to the fully sizable bracelet. A timepiece with huge high horology cred, the best way to get into Holy Trinity watchmaking while still paying reasonable money and getting an all-around sports watch you can use full-time as your only watch. Let's up the ante. A bigger watch, bigger high horology street cred, more features, more refinement. Let's talk about the reference 7700V. Launched in 2016, this is part of the third generation of the Vacheron Overseas. This one's bigger, 43.5 millimeters, but it doesn't wear it. Only 12.7 millimeters thick, so it's nice and slim for what it is. Still highly anti-magnetic, 25,000 ampere per meter or above, 150 meters water resistant. This one's a world time with an engraved center dial. You can see it in matte shimmering sheen, the image of the projection of the globe as seen from the North Pole. Well, that's all metallic, and then outboard of it you can see the lacquered chapter rings featuring 37 individual time zones, including 30-minute and 15-minute offset zones, as well as designations for daylight savings time. You can see outboard of the world ring, there is a 24-hour day-night chapter ring that'll give you day-night 24-hour distinction for any of those zones. You'll also appreciate that Vacheron keeps it simple. Lots of time zones, lots of hours, lots of hands, but no date. This is an elemental world time only. Now you can see the handsome Maltese cross-inspired bezel. One of the big differences between second and third generation is that circular plinth underneath the bezel. Some like it, some don't, but it does give the watch a more muscular appearance. Now what changed with the Generation 2 to 3 is that there is a quick release system for the bracelet. Easy to do. You pull the tab, you need nothing but your fingernails. The watch comes with 2 accessory straps and a second deployant buckle in steel for those straps. The straps are both blue, they're leather and they're rubber. Now you can see, just as with the second generation watch, each individual link is removable. And you can see once again that on both sides, so you're going to get precise sizing. What you're also going to get, and no one talks too much about this, is the micro adjustment system built into each side of the clasp. So you have that 1.5 millimeters on both sides for fine tuning. You'll note you also have a half link built in so that you can precisely size by removing links as well as by sizing the micro adjustment. Now if you look at the case back here, you can see Vacheron's caliber 2460 WT, Geneva Hallmark World Time, engraved 22 karat compass rose winding mass. This one does feature stop seconds, automatic winding, 40-hour power reserve, and the Geneva Hallmark. The way they get it anti-magnetic is they put a paramagnetic ring all the way around it so that it channels those magnetic field lines around the hairspring while still displaying the movement. It's a brilliant construction and a wonderful value. Again, there is no World Time Aquanaut, Nautilus, or Royal Oak against which to compare. Let's talk about another World Time watch, but from a very different school of thought and a brand that doesn't get enough play, and it deserves more. But this is a brand that does not get enough play on this channel, and it's Girard Perregaux. If you want a rare watch, buy a micro edition. And if you want a micro edition, look for something truly special. 20 pieces from the year 2012. This is the Girard Perregaux WW.TC World Time White Ceramic flyback chronograph. Now you need to wind this one a little bit more, but as you can see, flyback chronograph action, a gorgeous tone-on-tone panda dial, and though you can't quite see it, the sapphire over the dial is a smoked gradient gray sapphire designed to allow the dial to contrast with the gloss white of the case. Now as you can see, this is white ceramic, 43 millimeters, with a lovely camber to the lugs that makes this watch very wearable, even on a small wrist. You can see the watch which I should also mention is highly water resistant, is a full-service sports watch. World time, date, automatic, flyback chronograph, rubber-capped crowns, as well as chronograph pushers, and a full rubber sports strap. Easy to wear in spite of its 43mm size. This is a timepiece that is iconic Girard Perregaux. If you want to buy GP's icon, you're going to buy a Laureato or you're going to buy a WW.TC, which is World Time Chronograph. And that's exactly what we have here, a 20-piece limited edition. Now, this example right here is a very special watch, and you can see through the case back, they also chose a smoked sapphire over the caliber 3300 manufactured base movement, 46-hour power reserve, ultra thin, and as you can see, imaginatively finished with immense engine turning, straight Côte de Genève across the bridges, blued screws, and then circular Côte de Genève across the rotor. The clasp is a brilliant piece. As you can see, it features a micro adjustment push button on both sides. So you simply push the buttons, you make your adjustment, and you have that micro adjustment on both sides of the clasp, which I should also mention is titanium and trigger actuated, so it only opens when you really, really want to pop it open. The watch is remarkably handsome, 100 meters water resistant, and as you can see, distinctive of Girard Perregaux. If you want a high horology watch from a brand none of your friends own, and you want one built in excruciatingly minute numbers, such that searches for an example for sale might take excruciating years, that is the watch to buy. Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about independent horology. Let's talk about two brands that have really made a name for themselves in the greater Geneva area. We'll start with the first, FP Journe. Now in 2017, late 2017, FP Journe launched the Holland & Holland Chronometre Souverain, also known as the Chronometre Holland & Holland, an ultra-rare 66-piece limited edition. It was broken up into two different series created by two different barrels taken from vintage Holland & Holland British firearms. Those firearms yielded their Damascus steel to create a total of 66 watches with 66 unique Damascus steel oxidized and stabilized dials. So this is the rarer of the two. One barrel yielded 38 watches, the other barrel yielded 28, and this is one of the 28 pieces. So you have a 39mm two-hand, no-date case. It's basically the Chronometre Bleu on steroids. More distinctive and more exclusive. Full stainless steel is a rarity for FP Journe. So is a full deployant clasp. Normally you don't get this, even on Complications. Here you get a deployant and it's in matching steel. You can see the case back features a customized movement. As you'll note, it does in fact mention, engraved on the base plate in 18 karat gold, the Holland & Holland Association. So this watch says Holland & Holland on the case. It has a unique dial and it has a unique caliber 1304 movement. Manual wind with a hidden drivetrain so you can't see the barrels and their drivetrain powering the escapement, though you can see the escapement. The drivetrain actually runs underneath the dial. Twin barrels, 18 karat rose gold, engine turning under the balance, a hobnail or Grande barleycorn. The Grande combined with a Côte de Genève, and you can see that's a nice gradient Côte de Genève laid down with abrasive wheel because one side is darker and one is lighter. It is not stamped Côte de Genève. All screw heads black polished. An easy watch to wear, throw it on the wrist. It has a matching thin alligator leather brown strap, one of 28 pieces from this specific barrel and only 66 Chronometre Holland & Holland made. This is a truly special collaboration between brands that have ultra blue chip status in their respective luxury segments. You don't even have to be into firearms like our occasional host Jason Main to love that watch and all it represents. Now let's talk about another independent that's made a splash since it was established in 2008. First watches from Laurent Ferrier came forth in 2010 and it immediately won with its Tourbillon double spiral the men's watch prize at the GPHG. Now this is a timepiece that debuted 2 years later. This is the Galley micro rotor, 40mm. This example, as you can see, in real stainless steel with a navy blue vertical satin finish dial. You can really see the satin finish of the dial and its metallic sheen. As I move it through the light, you'll note that the indices themselves, as well as the hands, which are white gold, they've been varnished white for contrast, and then there's a lovely dimple-style track outboard with a lovely, discreet, and chaste Laurent Ferrier script up at 12. Now, the watch features the Galley Case, inspired by a pebble that has been smoothed by a stream. Turn it all over, and you can see the caliber FBN 229. Automatic winding, 3-day power reserve. You'll note that that the automatic winding is by a rose lathe guilloche cut 22 karat micro rotor with a jeweled staff and a pawl-based winding system, so the winding is absolutely silent with no rattle or wobble. There's a natural escapement inspired by Abraham Louis Breguet. What's natural about it? Well, what's natural is that the two direct impulse escape wheels, there is no Swiss lever here. There is no lever of any kind. The two wheels impulse the balance naturally, each wheel impulsing the balance in only one direction, its direction of travel, either clockwise or counterclockwise. Hence, natural impulse only in the direction of travel, improving the accuracy, reducing the friction, improving the power reserve, so this single barrel can power the watch for 3 days, and you'll note that the finish is world class. I will say frankly, as an employee of a company that loves FP Journe and touts the brand, fets the brand, and pumps the brand, Laurent Ferrier finishing is better. The anglage is broader and brighter, and it's done by hand. The Côte de Genève are deeper and richer with a stronger gradient fade from side to side, and the black polish, which you'll see on the screw heads, for example, the bridge for the rotor and the bridge for the balance, the black polish is both brighter and more plentiful. I'm going to try to remove my fingerprints. I'm sorry, this one still has a little bit of glue from a packing sticker. But you'll also note that whereas you don't find interior angles on most Journe movements, here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sharp cleft interior angles, a free-sprung balance adjusted in 6 positions, beaten away at 21.6, and it does have an overcoil hairspring. So all the latest tech and spec is there, as well as the modern realization of the direct impulse, double direct natural escapement that Breguet first created in 1802. This is the realization in a wristwatch format. Pardon me, guys, I'm a little under the weather. Now, FP Journe has a response for that. A watch that, frankly, pops my eyes because it's rare, it's a first, and true world premieres in this industry are uncommon. But a jumping seconds. Now, the thing here is this is the Vagabondage III. I have it wound to a very low level, so you could see that the remontoir d'égalité constant force device that ensures a constant force from the mainspring barrel to the balance, it actually disengages below 12 hours remaining when the seconds go into scrolling mode. Now, you can see the power reserve up in the corner of the dial. As I wind it, the remontoir constant force device, which jumps 1 time a second, goes back into action, improving the chronometric precision and delivering true jumping seconds indication. The watch also features a jump hour complication in the upper corner. You can see that jump hour mechanism, and you can see, thanks to the smoked sapphire dial, most of the mechanism underneath is also highly visible. The Vagabondage, just under 46 millimeters lug to lug and just over 37 millimeters from side to side, and 8 millimeters thick. The rose gold version, made in 2017 for the 2018 model year, only 68 pieces of the rose gold created, so a very rare watch, and the third of the tonneau-shaped Vagabondage series, first coined back in 2006. Each one is a tonneau, and each one features no nomenclature or branding on the dial. All of the name, all of the branding, it's on the case back, on the movement and on the case back, but the Vagabondage series has never featured the Journe name on the dial. Now let's talk about a watch that frankly pushes all the right buttons, because if you're going to wear precious metal with diamonds, do it in a masculine and discreet fashion. As a dude, this is probably the best way to do it. A 3rd series Patek Philippe 3970 EP chronograph. So this is the étanche or water-resistant case. Not too water-resistant, guys. 30 meters. Don't go crazy. But in platinum, as you can see, it features a platinum case with a lovely stepped and concave bezel profile. You can see it's 3rd series because it features the baton-style hands rather than the earlier leaf-style hands, but it still features the hallmarks on the flanks of the lugs rather than the underside of the lugs. Now, this was made during the 90s, all 3970 models, numbering approximately 4,200 from 1986 to 2004, so no given example is common. Black dial platinum with diamond indices, one of the scarcest of them all. A Le Mans base caliber, this was the Le Mans 2310 in life. It was the same base movement that went to the moon as the Omega 321, albeit highly modified by Patek, with a Gyromax free-sprung balance and overcoil hairspring adjusted in all 6 positions. You can see it as a classical lateral clutch and cam chronograph system, which is absolutely gorgeous. And again, Patek really makes this their own movement, increasing the power reserve from 48 hours to 60 hours. So it's nice and handy, and of course the timepiece being discontinued, rare, Perpetual calendar chronograph, and Patek, is a core brand icon, as the Perpetual calendar chronograph from the first 1518 wristwatch Perpetual calendar chronograph of 1941 has been a Patek Philippe house specialty, and the Lemagne-powered Patek Philippe 3970 of the 90s and early 2000s and late 80s is one of the best of the line, 36.7 millimeters. This is a very traditionally sized men's dress complication, and again, if you're going to do diamonds in a men's watch, do it like that. Handsome, internal, functional, and very discreet. Bigger watch, manufacturer movement. This is the 2016 dial version of the Patek Philippe 5170 manual wind chronograph. Now the watch, about 11 millimeters thick, 39.4 millimeters in diameter. This Breguet numeral design first appeared in white gold back in 2013. We got a black dial in white gold for 2015, and for 2016, the penultimate version of this watch before the platinum was this lovely red gold, matte black dial, rose gold Breguet numeral 5170. Now, you will note, as a modern Patek Philippe in-house caliber, it has modern Patek Philippe features, such as, for example, stop seconds. The timepiece also has a wonderfully crisp column wheel action. While I love the Lemagne caliber, this caliber 29535 PS does have a better, crisper, and louder column wheel feel, and you can see that the column wheel cap has been entirely black polished. This watch, with a 60 to 65 hour power reserve beaten at a high beat rate, 28.8, still an overcoil made out of metal, no silicone here, hand-adjusted, handmade Breguet overcoil beaten away at 28.8 stop seconds. You've still got a lateral clutch, and note here, it features full jeweling, so there's very little friction built into this particular lateral clutch, and you can see the depth of this movement, the silvery sheen, satin finished of the steel chronograph yoke and levers, the black polish of the screws and column wheel cap, and the Côte de Genève across the bridges, and the engine turning on the plate below the balance. Throw it on the wrist, you can see this one features a full rose gold deploying clasp, upside down again so you can see it right side up. A nice handsome watch with an organic feel across the wrist thanks to its tightly downward sloped lugs that really drape around the wrist. I can recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, and boy is this a potent punch. Black dial and red gold. Let's jump to a watch that could be considered either the evil or the good twin of that one, depending on your perspective, but this is the 2016, actually launched for 2015 for the 2016 model year, a Lange und Sohne 1815 chronograph boutique, a flyback chronograph with a manual wind 60-hour power reserve. It beats away at a stately 18,000 vibrations per hour, 39.5 millimeters, white gold case, 11 millimeters thick. You can see that standard Lange stepped lug and a handsome satin finish contrast to the polish of the bezel. The dial is made of sterling silver. It's then silvered to feature this more conventional silver metallic sheen, and then all of the printing is in a lush blue. Now you can see that the hands, distinct from the first generation 1815, are actually polished white gold rather than blued, and then there is a pulsation scale outboard for using the chronograph to gauge a pulse. Caliber L9515 on the case back again. Same movement you'll find in the datograph, but without the power reserve and without the date indicator. Creates a cleaner dial and a thinner watch, but you get the same power reserve, accuracy, 5-position adjustment, and functionality. You could see the actuation of the flyback mechanism. You could see the actuation of the clutch mechanism. That's the clutch right there, and that's the flyback mechanism. A beautiful watch that wears naturally. In terms of fit, it's exactly the same as the Patek 5170R. Between the two, you don't have to ask me which one I would pick. It would be this one right here. It's less common somehow, in spite of the fact that Patek often takes applications for the 5170s, but this watch is still scarce enough that I've only seen a handful, and I still have to shoot a video of this watch because I don't have one yet. Let's jump to something that's a little bit more attainable and yet still grand in its way. The rose gold Geophysic Universal Time True Second. From Jaeger LeCoultre, it features the case design of the 2014 to present Geophysic line, also evocative of the original 1958 Geophysic model, but on the dial you have a lush engraved metal set of continents and beautiful gradient lacquered blue oceans. Now you have a world time chapter ring, and you can see how this works. It does have hacking seconds. As I move the hands, everything moves in sync. You'll also appreciate the fact that there is a feature that allows you to step individually the local time. And the watch features a deadbeat seconds complication, which is, I'll do my best to show it, which is visible through the case back. You can see its own individual stepping wheel and hairspring. The balance is what's known as the gyro lab. It's a non-annular balance. So in addition to being free sprung with a full balance wheel, you could just see here that the balance uses a yoke. So it's an anchor on both sides in the shape of the Jaeger LeCoultre JL logo. And maybe you could see that to better effect from this angle now, but it's not a wheel. It's not even a ring. This is a very tough movement, automatic winding, 40-hour power reserve, full bridge, free sprung, multi-position adjustment with a lovely gradient Côte de Genève gold rotor, real fire blued screws. You've got the tough architecture of a sports watch, the jump second complication, the world time functionality, and at 41.5 millimeters, it's a full-sized watch without being an oversized watch, wearing with great elegance, as you can see on my wrist. This is the hidden gem in the Geophysic product line, the Universal Time True Second, a gorgeous watch, and one for which I must say JLC has few valid alternatives, though this is one. A different take on the world time. This watch launched as part of the Polaris collection in 2018, and it is the Polaris Chronograph World Time. As you can see, a no-date, gradient blue dial with a darker outer edge that becomes a bit lighter as you get towards the center, and then darkening again with the metallic sheen of the center. The center is metallic, the outer face is satin, and then there is a lovely frosted granular step underneath the hour track with all of the indices applique not printed. Now the watch features a nearly hidden glass pane that occupies the semicircle representing the day. So you look for that glass pane. Those are the cities where it is currently day. Now, unlike the Geophysic Universal Time, here you can actually change your reference city. You could see I have New York set at 6 o'clock on this watch because that's where you put the index, but you'll also note that the cities with a triangular index adjacent allow you to calculate daylight savings time. So you have that winter time and summertime. You could step your reference city as appropriate if that time is in effect. Now the watch features a manufacturer caliber 750. It features a display case back for the first time over a caliber 750. And while honestly the 750 is not much to see, it's nice to know it's there. Column wheel vertical clutch, 2 barrels, stop seconds. It features a 28.8 beat rate, ceramic rotor bearings, unidirectional winding. You can actually see the column wheel through the bridges, and it has a wonderful column wheel feel. The watch under 13 millimeters thick. So though it's 44 millimeters in titanium, it's nice and thin on the wrist, and you can really get a sense of just how thin. With a strap designed by Casafaliano and a grade 5 titanium case, this is a 100-meter water-resistant true sports watch that's also extravagantly loomed for easy visibility at night. Okay, where are we right here? Let's talk about Grande, Seiko, and Omega. We have two counterpoints to each other. East and West, either one could be the best. It's solely due to your criteria. The Aquaterra, Good Planet, a 2016 launch in grade 5 titanium, 38.5 millimeters with a white lacquered dial, coaxial chronometer, 60-hour power reserve, 150 meters water resistant, and a time zone feature that allows you to step the hour hand independently. Let's throw this one on the wrist real quick and then take a look at the Grande Seiko SBGH 269. The watch on the wrist is easy to wear. I recommend it for wrists as small as 13 centimeters in circumference. It's a great unisex option. Also a lovely and underrated modern Omega that looks good in anything and wears on any wrist in any circumstance for any activity. Also features a silicone hairspring for amagnetic qualities, not anti-magnetic, amagnetic with Omega now. Here we have the 900-piece limited edition Grande Seiko SBGH 269. Now this watch is the high-beat automatic with the caliber 9S85, automatic winding, 55-hour power reserve, and what really sets this one apart is the dial, which is designed to remind you of autumn leaves in Japan, as well as the warmth of traditional Japanese lacquered wood floors during the cold fall months. As you can see, all of the dial furniture, hands, logo, and indices, as well as date aperture, hand-finished on micrometric diamond-tipped milling tools. And here you see that 9S case shape. This isn't the 44GS of the Platinum Grande Seiko we saw before. This is a more organic, arced, almost cambered, tonneau-like case. Now this watch is 100 meters water resistant, so it's not necessarily a sports watch, though you can wear it in all circumstances. 39.5 millimeters in stainless steel. It's very wearable on any wrist. And I'll mention that because it is a limited edition, every year Grande Seiko does a few limited pieces with an oxidized titanium rotor. So here it has been green oxidized over the 37 joule, 6-position adjusted, 36,000 vibration per hour base movement. Where should we end? Oh my gosh, what we got left? Oh, we have something special right here from My original house of passion, and still a favorite, LeCoultre, the Amvox III, designed to represent the long-term union between Aston Martin and Jaeger instruments, which lasted from the 20s until the 90s. This is a watch that came out in 2007, 44 millimeters in ceramic with rose gold garnishing. 300 pieces were made. It features a manufacture movement. This is the caliber 988 here, and it features elements from the Extreme Lab 1. You saw the Gyro Lab balance on the Geophysic Universal Time. Well, this watch uses the Extreme Lab 1's carbon composite rotor and platinum iridium winding mass with ceramic bearings and unidirectional winding action and a large lever arm. This might be the most efficient winding system of all time. You can see that one side of the bridges has been rhodium plated and the other side of the bridge, bearing the tourbillon carriage, has been gold plated. The watch featuring a GMT function that is wonderfully discreet and hidden on the dial. What you can do, and you can see how there is a skeletonized hand indicating the secondary hour. You can hide that secondary hour if you don't want to see it. There's a sapphire AM/PM disc to indicate the second time zone, and because there is a date indicator and you don't want to block the tourbillon visible just beneath, during the night of the 31st, as it transitions to the 1st, the system automatically jumps the date indicator all the way to the 1st, so it will never obscure the tourbillon. Throw the watch on the wrist in this ceramic case, which was LeCoultre's first ever round ceramic case. It wears easily for a 44. Handsome, nicely stanced, light because it's principally of ceramic, and also wonderfully scratch resistant as ceramic. This is an aggressive sports watch that provides a high horology riposte to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks, Vacheron Overseas, and of course Hublot Big Bangs of the world. Have I forgotten anything? Nope. I think I have finally run the table. Thanks to you, thanks to my crew. Contact tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase inquiries about any of the watches you see right here. That is the direct line for you to me and my crew. It's a tight-knit group of only 3 people who directly answer, and I'm copied on every single email, so you will reach me directly. Thanks so much. Time out, Tim out, and thanks for logging on.